It was a super hot summer when my friends Emily, Noah, Olivia, Liam, and I decided to ditch the noisy city. We were all tired of doing the same stuff every day and craved an adventure to be closer to nature and hang out more. After planning for days, we found a cool cabin hidden deep in the woods for our weekend trip. The cabin was a cute wooden house all on its own, surrounded by giant trees. It felt old-timey in a charming way different from the city. Instead of noisy cars, we heard birds chirping, leaves rustling, and peaceful quiet. It was a perfect change from the city noise we were used to. Olivia, the most adventurous one, jumped out of the car first. Her eyes widened when she saw the cabin placed among the tall trees. She loved old-fashioned places, and this cabin seemed like the perfect spot for her. We unpacked our stuff and explored the cabin. We were both excited to be there and a little bit nervous too. We had no idea this weekend getaway would turn into a super scary adventure. That night, we built a campfire outside. We told stories, laughed a bunch, and looked at all the stars. Noah, the funny one, kept cracking us up with his silly jokes. But later, in the middle of the night, we noticed Noah wasn't there anymore. That was weird because he never wanted to miss out on fun stuff. We looked everywhere for him inside the cabin and called his name, but he didn't answer. Emily knew Noah the best out of all of us. She kept saying over and over again, "Where did he go?" and walking back and forth, really worried. When we saw Noah's phone on his bed, Emily grabbed it really fast. Her hands were shaking so much as she held the phone close like it might tell her where Noah was. The phone screen showed a creepy old cabin on the map app. Emily's face turned white as a ghost. She whispered, "We gotta find him," her voice shaky. It wasn't just a suggestion. It was a desperate plea. She wouldn't give up on Noah, and neither would we. The map sent shivers down my spine. Why would Noah be there in the dead of night? Following the map, we walked into the dark woods. The only light came from the moon peeking through the thick trees. We finally reached the creepy cabin, a dark outline against the moonlit sky. It looked scary and empty, with boarded-up windows and peeling paint. Inside, we found Noah. He was tied up, his face was super pale, and his eyes were full of fear. He stammered out a story about a weird guy who snatched him when he went outside for some fresh air because he couldn't sleep. The creepy man brought him to this abandoned cabin and left him tied up like a prisoner. We quickly untied Noah in a flash and bolted out of there. But just as we were making a break for it, a dark figure loomed in the distance. The kidnapper. We took off running as fast as our legs could carry us, with Noah in the lead. The dark forest was like a giant maze, but we couldn't stop, not even for a second. The kidnapper's yells echoed through the trees, making us jump a mile high. But we were scared out of our minds, and that fear somehow gave us super speed. We kept running, our eyes glued to the faint glow of our cabin lights in the distance, our only hope of escape. The chase through the thick woods was like something out of a scary movie. We could hear the guy's footsteps getting closer, but we were too terrified to even glance back. Branches whipped at our faces, and our lungs burned like fire. The peaceful forest we knew was gone, replaced by a nightmare that came to life. Liam, usually the quiet one in our group, was falling behind. He looked super tired, his breaths coming in wheezes. He wasn't the sportiest of us, but he was giving it his all. Every dark corner looked like the kidnapper, and every little sound made us jump. It could be him yelling again. But we were so scared it was like our bodies had superpowers to keep running. After what felt like forever, we finally reached our cabin and locked ourselves in. Safe inside, we all crashed onto the floor, gasping for air. Liam was the worst off. His face was pale and his body was shaking like crazy. We were all totally freaked, the scary feeling slowly fading but leaving behind the truth of what just happened. A crazy kidnapper in the woods and a terrifying chase for our lives. We called the police and told them everything. They showed up at sunrise, asking a bunch of questions and looking around the place. It felt weird reliving everything with them. They searched the creepy cabin and the woods around it, but couldn't find the strange man anywhere. That night totally messed up our weekend trip. We left the cabin as soon as we could, feeling so relieved to be out of those woods. But we still can't forget what happened. The cabin, which was supposed to be fun, now reminds us of how scared we were. And the weird guy? No clue where he went. The woods swallowed him whole, just like they seemed to swallow our screams that night. We have no idea who he was or why he did it. All we know is that we made it out alive, and that's all that matters. Hey, I am Mike. Once upon a time, there were two best friends, me and Alex. Both of us were obsessed with technology and spent our entire day on our phones and laptops. One day, we felt burned out and needed a break from the digital world. We both craved some fresh air and nature, so we hopped online and searched for the perfect escape. We wanted a place far away from the city's constant noise and bustle, somewhere totally off the grid with no phones or internet allowed. That's when we stumbled upon an ad that caught our eye. A tiny cabin hidden deep in the woods. The pictures showed a cool, old-fashioned place surrounded by nothing but trees. It looked exactly like what we were looking for. The idea of spending a whole weekend in such a remote spot was both exciting and a little nerve-wracking. We were so used to the city life, the constant noise, and the never-ending stream of information online. Being completely cut off from all that was a scary thought, but also kind of thrilling. We decided to take the chance. We packed our bags, leaving our laptops and phones behind, and set off on our adventure. With every mile we drove away from the city, our excitement grew even bigger. We were ready for whatever this weekend in the woods had in store for us, or at least that's what we thought. We finally arrived at the cabin late in the afternoon. It was deep in the woods, miles away from any town. The cabin itself looked very old, with a mysterious vibe that suggested it held hidden secrets. Inside, we even found a dusty old radio that only played static, adding to the whole scary but cool feel of the place. The cabin's loneliness hit us harder than we thought. It was super quiet except for leaves rustling and owls hooting sometimes. It felt totally different from the city noise we were used to. This quietness started to feel creepy instead of cool, but we figured it was just because the place was new. Night came and the cabin felt like it had come alive. Moonlight shadows made it even more mysterious, and the radio started whispering weird stuff we couldn't understand. We tried to convince ourselves it was just a prank or a bad reception, but it made us even more nervous. The next morning, our worst fear came true. Our car wouldn't start, and our phones had no signal. We were stuck in the middle of nowhere, totally cut off. The adventure we were so excited about before feels like a big mistake now. The feeling of being trapped replaced our fun mood with pure dread. Things got worse as the day went on. A super strong storm blew in suddenly, howling wind rattling the doors and windows. It felt like the cabin itself was alive, reacting to our fear. The storm raged so hard it seemed like nature itself didn't want us to leave. Trapped inside, the wind and rain made a crazy loud noise all night, keeping us awake. We huddled together for warmth, the cold seeping in through the cracks. The creepy radio whispers had stopped, replaced by the constant roar of the storm. The next morning, the storm had vanished, but our problems hadn't. The car wouldn't budge and our phones were still dead. Stuck with no way to call for help, a feeling of dread filled us. But hey, we were tech wizards, remember? Using our skills, we somehow got the car working again. It felt like a miracle. We didn't waste a second packing our stuff in a hurry. It felt weird, though. As we got ready to leave, the strange stuff seemed to happen even more often. It was like the cabin, or maybe something living in it, didn't want us to go. Finally, we were out of there, safe and sound. We told the authorities about everything, but they just said it was stress in our imaginations. We knew better, though. We had experienced something real. As we drove further and further away, a scary feeling wouldn't leave us. We couldn't help but wonder what exactly happened back there in that creepy cabin. The mystery lingered, a reminder of our terrifying adventure. It was just another ordinary Tuesday at the office when my coworker, Anna, came up to me with some awesome news. Her eyes were practically glowing with excitement. "Hey, Ben," she said, "guess what? Rachel invited us to spend a weekend at her cabin in the mountains. It's way up high, way out there. What do you think?" "Rachel?" She's an old friend from college, and it's been ages since we hung out. Catching up with her sounded pretty cool. Plus, leaving the noisy city for a whole weekend? There was no way I was going to pass that up. The weekend finally arrived, and Anna and I packed our bags like explorers. We hopped in the car and started our adventure. The drive took forever, but after hours on the road, we finally pulled up to the cabin. It was tucked away in a super quiet spot, surrounded by a thick forest. The cabin itself looked old-fashioned and kind of cozy, but there was also something a little creepy about it. The giant trees made these long, scary shadows, and it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, except for the occasional sound of leaves rustling or maybe an owl hooting way off in the distance. As we unloaded the car and walked into the cabin, I just couldn't shake this weird feeling. It was like we'd stepped into a whole different place, completely different from the city. Night fell, and the cabin got swallowed by darkness. The only light came from the tiny glow of the windows and the occasional flash from our phones. It was pitch black outside, which made the cabin feel even more alone. We had to use our phone flashlights just to see where we were going. Even though it was night, the silence outside the cabin was creepy. We tried to forget the weird vibes by cracking jokes. I remember saying, "This is like being in a scary movie." We all laughed, trying to lighten the mood. Inside, the party was going strong. On one side, Rachel's college friends were laughing and talking about old times. On the other side, that there were some people I didn't know. One guy really stuck out. He had a weird tattoo of a city name on his neck. My stomach did a flip when I saw a flash of metal in his pocket. A knife. I tried to ignore it. Maybe he just carried it for safety out here in the mountains. As the night went on, things got weird. The strangers got louder and rougher, not really acting like they were there for a friendly visit. It was clear they didn't care about Rachel or her cabin. They were just here to party and didn't seem to mind messing things up. Seeing how the party was going downhill, Rachel, Anna, and I huddled together to figure out what to do. We decided the best thing was to ask the group to leave. We hoped they'd be cool and respect Rachel's wishes by heading out peacefully. Rachel took a deep breath and walked over to the group. She politely but firmly told them it was time for them to go, but they didn't listen. They just brushed her off, saying they were just having a good time. One of the girls, who seemed less drunk than the others, actually listened to us and agreed they should leave. But just as things were calming down, a loud crack echoed through the cabin. Glass shattering everywhere, and then another crash, and another. It sounded like someone was smashing all the windows. Panic exploded in the room like a bomb. My brain couldn't keep up with what was happening. Then it hit us. These weren't just party crashers, they were robbers. They used their friends leaving as a distraction to steal our stuff. Phones, wallets, anything valuable gone. But the stolen stuff wasn't the worst part. One of our friends, Mike, had a terrible idea. He tried to sneak out during the chaos, hoping to get help. Wrong move. The robbers caught him and beat him up badly. We found him near the back door, completely knocked out. These weren't just robbers, they were dangerous criminals who wouldn't hesitate to hurt us. The cabin, which was supposed to be a relaxing getaway, now felt like a cage. But even though we were scared out of our minds, we decided to stay put for the night. The night crawled by forever. We kept listening for any sound that might be the robbers coming back. Slowly, people started to leave. They were still scared of the robbers hiding in the woods, but they wanted to be safe at home. One by one, they crept out, faces white with fear. Anna and I decided to stay with Rachel. We couldn't leave her alone after everything. We took turns staying awake all night, watching while the other person tried to sleep. When the sun finally came up, it filled the cabin with a soft yellow glow. In the morning light the night before felt like a scary dream. But the broken windows and our missing stuff were a rude awakening. We knew it wasn't safe to stay any longer. We might not even know if the robbers will come back. We packed our bags, helped Rachel clean up a mess, and got ready to go. Before leaving, we talked about calling the police. There were drugs at the party, and Rachel freaked out about her parents finding out. After a long talk, we decided not to. We didn't want anyone to get in trouble, and we were just happy to be safe.